Have you ever made a decision and later realized it wasn't as rational as you thought? Our minds are very powerful. They also rely on mental shortcuts called cognitive biases. These biases help us process information quickly, but they also can lead us to flawed judgments without even realizing it. In this video, we'll explore 9 of the most common biases, what they are, how they show up in everyday life, and how awareness of them can help us think more clearly. Confirmation bias, just as the name sounds, is our tendency to seek out, favor, and remember information that confirms what we already believe. So if you like pineapple on pizza, and all your friends like pineapple on pizza, chances are you're going to think a lot of people like it. But you also ignore evidence that challenges our views. Plenty of people don't like pineapple on pizza. That's okay. So that's an example of a confirmation bias. So if you believe a certain diet is the best, you like to pay more attention to studies that support and dismiss ones that don't. It applies in politics, whatever you can think of, there's a confirmation bias to go along with it. So to counter this bias, actively look for opposing viewpoints and ask yourself, what evidence would change my mind? Next up is anchoring bias. That occurs when we rely too heavily on the first piece of information we encounter. Like, for example, if your very first car was a Ford, chances are you're going to stick with Ford until eventually you get into another car. It could be a rental or your friend's car. It's like, hey, I like this one. But anchoring bias is like your first impression is the one that sticks in your head. Okay? That initial number or fact becomes an anchor that shapes all our subsequent judgments. A classic example is negotiation. If a seller names a high price first, the final agreed price will often be higher than if a lower number had been stated first. Beware of anchors in your decision making and try to gather independent information before committing to a position. Attribution bias refers to the errors we make when explaining behavior. We tend to attribute other people's mistakes to their character, even though it could be wrong, but our own mistakes to circumstances. For example, if a coworker is late, we think they're disorganized. If we're late, it's because of traffic. This double standard can damage relationships, both personal and professional, and lead to unfair judgments. Practice empathy by considering the situational factors that might be influencing others. We don't know their whole story. The halo effect is next. I like this one. I'm also guilty of this a lot. The halo effect is when a single positive trait, one, causes us to assume that a person or a thing is good in all other ways too. If someone is attractive or confident, we might also assume that they are competent, trustworthy, or intelligent with no other evidence. Nothing. They're attractive or confident. You've got to be smart. This bias influences hiring decisions, product reviews, and personal relationships. Try to evaluate people and things in each specific quality rather than letting one impression color everything. Next up, availability bias. This is the tendency to judge the likelihood of events based on how easily examples come to mind. Stay away from the news. Things like dramatic events like plane crashes or shark attacks or riots or whatever kind of business the news is putting up there. It makes you want to watch more, but it's always bad news. So people tend to overestimate how common these things really are. Compared to quieter times, it doesn't make the news. So when assessing risk or making decisions, look at the actual statistics rather than relying on what comes to mind first. The recent memory stuff. Look at everything. This is a pretty good one. The Dunning-Kruger Effect. This is a bias where people with limited knowledge in a certain area tend to overestimate their own competence, while true experts often underestimate theirs. So in other words, the less you know, and you're sure about that, the more confident you may be. The antidote is a commitment to continuous learning and staying humble. Not willful ignorance, which we see all the time. Regularly seek feedback and be willing to acknowledge the limits of your knowledge. This is a real challenge for a lot of people. You don't know everything. Be humble. The next bias is the ostrich effect. And it's pretty much what we can figure out. It describes our tendency to avoid negative information by metaphorically burying our heads in the sand. So when faced with uncomfortable facts, such as declining investments or a health symptom you'd rather not know about, we sometimes choose to look away and ignore it. Ignoring problems rarely makes them go away. facing difficult decisions early gives you more options to respond effectively. Now we have the negativity bias. It's our tendency to give more weight to negative experiences, information, and emotions than to equally positive ones. A single criticism can outweigh 5 compliments. Bad news travels faster than good news. This bias evolved to keep us safe from threats. But in modern-day life, it can lead to excessive worry, pessimism, and poor decision-making. Intentionally reflect on positive experiences to create a more balanced perspective. There's another big one, the spotlight effect. That's the belief that other people are paying far more attention to you than they really are. When you trip in public or have a bad hair day, it feels like everyone's seeing it. But in reality, most people are too absorbed in their own lives to register, even if they're looking at you, but to register what you're doing or acting or looking like. Understanding the spotlight effect can free you from unnecessary self-consciousness and social anxiety. Most people don't care what you're doing, as long as you're not hurting them. So cognitive biases are a natural part of how our minds work. It's a survival thing. It helps us get through our lives and our days. So we can't eliminate them entirely, and we shouldn't. We're learning to recognize them. We can slow down our thinking, our decision-making, our assumptions, and make more thoughtful decisions. The first step to thinking more clearly is simply to know where your blind spots are. So if this was helpful to you, if it helped you learn anything at all, please hit the like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell for more videos like this. Thank you for watching.